Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Parker from MVP Training Solutions. And today is a discussion regarding strategic communication mastery. This session, or the information in this session, is one of a 12 module course that we offer on school. And we also offer it on our homepage. But this particular course is called Strategic Communication Mastery. It is a certification course, and it does lead to a certification. During the certification process itself, it's a 5-day process, 4 days of instruction, 1 day of an oral examination. More information about this course and many other courses similar to this can be found on our homepage at MVP Training Solutions. And the courses for this course will eventually be loaded on school, and we'll be giving the video courses away for $10 per module. At the end of that 12th module, if you go through all 12 modules, there is an oral exam that you'll contact us for us to deliver. So, without any further ado, I will share my screen with you, and then we will ultimately get started. All right. As you've heard me mention, this is the Strategic Communication Mastery course. This is my information here. By all means, feel free to reach out to us at any time. My phone number here, email here. This is our accreditation stamp. Some of the organizations we are affiliated with here in the Las Vegas area. That's who I am, a little bit about me, some of my military career information, currently what I'm doing now, some of the awards that I've received over the years. So I want to start out with highlighting a couple of pieces of information as it relates to some of the topics we'll be discussing today. So this is Kadena Air Base, located in Okinawa, Japan. And their mission is located here, right? Then you'll see they have their vision listed here. These are just some of the organizations that organizational priorities that they have for this particular installation as it relates to the Indo-Pacific region, right? So keep that in mind, their mission, their vision, and their priorities. So this is one of the 2 units I was assigned to while I was stationed at Kadena Air Base. This is the 31st Rescue Squadron, And you'll see here that they also have a mission specifically to their organization. Pararescue men are trained, equipped, and postured to conduct full spectrum personnel recovery operations in both peacetime and in combat. Again, that's their mission. You'll also see here the 33rd Rescue Squadron's mission. This is the second unit I was assigned to while stationed at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, Japan. And you'll see their mission here. Train, plan, execute every day to ensure they have what it takes to help when someone's life is on the line. Again, this is the mission of the 33rd Rescue Squadron, also lovingly referred to as the Jolly Greens, right? Because they fly the HH-60 helicopters. So this is a course description of the entire course, the certification course, the 12-module course itself. All of the slides that you see here are kept in the school window. Under this course, you'll have the slides. You'll also have the student manual. You'll have a takeaway toolkit as well to add to your toolbox. But again, this is the course description for the entire course itself. These are the course objectives for the entire course as well. as well as the learning outcomes for the entire course. So today, we're going to be talking specifically about the foundations of strategic communication, general overview here, and then the four areas you see listed there. So when we're talking about the foundations of strategic communications, these are the core concepts or standards or processes that ensure communication advances the organizational goals through aligned messaging, stakeholder awareness, and a disciplined execution of that communication. Yes, it includes the purpose, the audience analysis, the message design, the channel selection, how you want to get that message through, the timing of the message, feedback loops, and any ethical practices of the organization. That is the foundational core of strategic communication. So, when we're talking about defining what it is, the definition of what it is, you'll see it there on the screen there. Strategic communication is an in-depth process that considers who you are talking to, why you're talking to them, how and when you will talk to them, what form of communication the content should take, and when the channels you choose, what are they going to be to get that information out or to share that information that you have, as you see here. So when we're talking about defining strategic communication, that's really what we're talking about. And you'll find that there are varying definitions out there. But when we're talking about strategic communication, it's a planned message delivery. It aligns with the goals. It targets specific audiences. It measures effectiveness. Here's what we're talking about. When we say planned message delivery, that's that structured approach to when, where, and who communicates that message using a defined sequence and a channel, a plan itself of how they have chosen to get that message out to that specific audience, that specific target audience. When that's done, it reduces surprise, right? When it's clear, it ensures that the right level of detail about your communication reaches the right people at the right time, even in the right quantity, right? Information overload is a real thing. When we're talking about aligning with goals, aligns with the goals means that the communication is tied to the organizational priorities. Now, at the very beginning, I showed you some of the priorities that of the 31st and 33rd Rescue Squadron missions and the priorities of the 18th Wing of the at Kadena Air Base, right? So that's what we're talking about here. It has to align with those goals, right? The organizational priorities, decision criteria, and the measurable outcomes. What does it take for us to be able to save someone's life as a 31st or a 33rd Rescue Squadron member? When that's right, when that's done right, the message is reinforced what leadership is trying to achieve and really what success looks like for them, right? So when we're talking targets specific audiences, yes, we have to be able to target the specific audience with our messages. And we'll talk about it more later, but that message may change slightly based on the audience that you are targeting. So when we're talking about the specific audiences, we mean the messages are tailored to your stakeholders' needs, the roles, and the concerns while staying consistent with the core narrative. Although you may change the channel, although you may change some of the nuances associated with that message, the core message is this is still what we need to get done. You're tailoring it to that particular part of your audience, right? So this is going to include in selecting the right messenger, meaning the right person to deliver that message, the right tone. Do they deliver that you want them to deliver that message in, right? And a level of detail for each individual group. For a pararescue jumper, you may not have to go into as many details about that particular mission as you would for a flight engineer. They have the similar audiences, but they're not exactly the same. That's what we're talking about here. And then measuring effectiveness. Measuring effectiveness means that we are that the communication performance is tracked using the evidence such as comprehension, sentiment, adaptation, and behavioral change. What are we talking about there? We're talking about whether or not you're able to document what you've said you need done, and it was interpreted correctly and executed the way you thought it was. And you're documenting that, because ultimately those results are going to guide any updates to the message, the timing, and the follow through of your future messages. All right. Core principles. When we're talking about core principles, we are we're talking about the non-negotiable standards that's going to govern how an organization communicates across their leaderships, teams, their individual teams, and the ultimate various channels they choose to communicate. Email, phone call, face-to-face. You with me? Right? That type of stuff. When we're talking about channels, right? They set the rules for message integrity. They set the tone. They set the decision rights. Basically, who gets to make the decision. They establish that. And the stakeholders treatment. So the communication stays consistent under any pressure that may be there in that particular circumstance. And they make sure that their message is aligned with the mission and the strategy and trusted ultimately over time. So we could say core principles prioritize timing. That simply means that we choose when to communicate so that the message lands when decision, attention, and context align. Decisions, attention, and context align. That's when it really hits. Sequence communication updates to reduce the noise, prevent any surprise, and support the coordinated efforts, right? So make sure that message is clear, right? And at the right amount at the right time, right? When we're talking about core principles focusing on outcomes, that means that we are framing the communication around the results required. This is what we need done by this time, by this group, right? And the measurements of the success. Connect those messages to, as leaders, we have to connect those messages to the decisions, the behaviors, the deliverables, the what it is coming back to us that we've asked for, and who's accountable, right? Who's accountable? So when we say core principles emphasize clarity, they absolutely do. That means that we use simple language, direct language with a clear point, clear rationale, and a clear next step. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about clarity there, emphasizing clarity. When we do that, we are removing ambiguity. We are defining any key terms that may be necessary to define, right? And we're stating the ownership of the result, the actions along the way, and whatever deadlines that we've established. If it has to be done this way by this date and this time, that's what we are doing as executives, right? We are establishing that. And when we say core principles ensures audience readiness, it absolutely does. It shows that we prepare the intended audience to receive, understand, and act on the message with minimal confusion and resistance. Some key checks to ensure audience readiness. You have to understand what their current awareness levels are about that particular task that you're giving them. We have to, what's the likelihood of the objectives and the questions, right? Timing and the content fits, right? Feedback and reinforcement plan. What are you expecting? Are you expecting to get an update every day? Are you expecting an update every significant change? You make sure you clarify what that might be, because someone may assume a significant change is different from what you would consider it to be. The role of feedback. Feedback ultimately means that we're verifying whether it allows us to verify whether or not the message was understood, whether or not the message was appropriately accepted and acted on as we intended. Right? If we fire and forget, we're not really sure if they even understood what we said. Did they even accept what we said, or were they still confused? That's what we're talking about. So that effective feedback role, it allows any gaps in our communication to kind of come up to the top. Helps us identify any resistance to the message, or even to the task, or to the mission, or to the objectives that we're trying to achieve, and any unintended early effects. It enables our leaders to adjust any framing, how we frame the message, the timing, and the follow through. And it protects the outcome and the trust that our people have in us when we get the feedback, or when we understand the role, or the importance, I should say, of the feedback. So here we'll say role of feedback identifies gaps, refines strategies, builds trust, and enhances engagement. So when we're talking about identifying the gaps, feedback reveals where understanding, alignment, and execution has broken down across the stakeholders. It highlights the missing information, that those unclear expectations that you have of them, or the resource or capability shortfalls that threaten your ultimate goal, or your ultimate results that you're wanting to see. When we're talking about refining these strategies, right? Refined strategies means that the feedback provides the evidence to adjust the message. If I can clearly see what I've just said did not resonate with you, I'm able to visually see that, right? And I can adjust maybe how I've said something for you to better understand. We're talking about sequencing and the stakeholder actions to improve the impact of the result. Excuse me. These things help the leaders update priorities and tactics as conditions and risks change along the way. So builds trust. Feedback builds trust. That means that feedback demonstrates active listening, transparency, and accountability through visible response to inputs. Remember, I talked about that just a minute ago. I can visually see that maybe I need to rephrase something, right? And enhanced engagement means, right, that the feedback increases the participation when people see that their inputs shape the decisions and the next step. I want feedback from you because your feedback will help me as a leader to shape the next steps. A couple of ways to enhance engagement: ask a clear question per update, right? Close the loop on inputs, right? Share progress with the next steps. This is where we are now. This is where we're trying to get to. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the role of feedback. Inclusivity in communication. And we will circle back a little bit later on inclusivity in communication. But what we're talking about here, it means that we, as the leaders, designing our messages and delivery methods so that all of the relevant stakeholders have equitable access to the information, to and understand the meaning, and are able to participate. It accounts for things like language, culture, roles, disabilities, and any power dynamics so that the decisions and the actions reflect broad input and reduce any preventable issues of exclusion. Preventable issues, right? So inclusivity in communication avoids jargon. Yeah, we use plain terms and we define any necessary technical language so that the meaning stays consistent across the roles and the background of the receivers, right? This is going to reduce any misinterpretation, and it's going to speed up the decision-making processes along the way within our organization that we have to make as the leader. When we're talking about the use inclusive language, that means that we're going to choose the words that respect people's identities, their roles, their experiences, without any assumptions or any stereotypes. This ultimately protects the credibility and increases the willingness of the members on the receiving end, the ones that you're asking to do something. It's going to increase their willingness to actually do it, get engaged, right? Addressing cultural differences. That means that we are framing our communication. We're providing examples and the norms for directness, hierarchy, right? And conflict styles that may present itself across our communities within our organization, across the cultures that operate within our organization. And ensures accessibility. Inclusivity in communication ensures accessibility. Ways to ensure accessibility: add captions to some of your transcripts, right? If you have somebody visually impaired, you have to consider that. If you have somebody that is hearing impaired, you have to consider that. But what if someone can't actually move a mouse on the computer, but they work in your organization and they're wonderful employees or members serving with your team? Those things you have to keep in mind, right? Use readable fonts. Make sure the font's big enough that people in the back of the room can see what you're trying to say, right? Offer multiple language options. If you have a multicultural organization, you should have multiple language options for them to be able to complete training, for instance, that may be required. Here are a list 4 questions. These are reflection questions of the information we've just covered in this first section. Feel free to pause the video at any point to review the questions that you see there. Formulate any thoughts and or ideas along the way. The role of communication in executive leadership. That really highlights how executive communication aligns people, aligns resources, and decisions around strategic priorities, because it uses clear direction, consistent expectations, and visible accountability. It also protects trust and legitimacy by explaining any trade-offs that may have to occur for you to achieve your goal. It listens to stakeholders and it manages risks during changes that may occur during the transformation phase, and if there is any disruption, and it has to be able to stand up to any scrutiny, right? So the role of communication in executive leadership aligns teams with the vision. That means that we translate the vision, as you remember, I showed you the vision for the organization at the very beginning, into shared priorities, decision rules, role-specific expectations. It creates a common narrative that really guides the daily choices across the functional areas and the various levels within your organization. Communicate strategy clearly. That means that we explain what will change, what will stay the same, and why it matters now, and how success will be measured in the future. Reinforces organizational direction. That means that we repeat the key priorities consistently across all forums. I can't tell you one thing in the meeting and then stand on the stage in front of everybody tell them something completely different. That doesn't work. We have to use the same definitions and the same standards. When we do that, that allows us to correct any drift that may happen in our communication. It allows us to correct those drifts early on in our communication along the way. Reframe whatever the agenda or the goals may have been, the matrices that may be needed to measure our success, and any operating norms along the way. So that is us reinforcing the organizational direction. Builds leadership authority. We increase confidence through consistent messaging as leaders, as executives, right? Disciplined follow through, and transparent reasoning. All those things are critical to the success of an executive leader. Our authority grows when we as leaders communicate with accuracy, fairness, and accountability, even when we're under pressure. Trust, very small word, but has a significant impact on everything we do as leaders. So building trust means that we are establishing confidence that leaders and the organization will act with integrity, competence, and consistency over time. So in strategic communication, trust is built through truthful messaging, predictable follow-through, timely disclosure, and respectful two-way communication, two-way dialogue, especially during uncertainty, transition, or significant change in your organization, in your mission, vision, or your objectives. So building trust uses transparent messaging. That means that we share what we know, what is unknown, and what will happen next. And we do that without holding up on or hiding any trade-offs or risks to what we're trying to achieve. So we have to pair that transparency with clear decision criteria and timely updates to the folks we serve. So we're talking building trust, strengthens stakeholder confidence. That means that we communicate priorities, progress, and constraints in a consistent format so that the stakeholders know what to expect. They're waiting for that answer all the time, right? So follow through on communication, follow through on commitments, follow through and correct any errors that may happen fast. Don't delay. If you said something that was incorrect, you have to be quick to address that. Foster encouraging openness and accountability. That means that we invite questions and dissent. Very important. Keyword. We invite dissent. We invite questions. Very important. Then we document those decisions as a result. We document owners of those actions. We're documenting the due dates. We're closing the loop with results and lessons learned, and so that ultimately accountability is visible to everybody, right? And then we're going to foster mutual respect because we're going to treat stakeholders as partners through active listening, fair considerations, and any impacts, and we're going to do that in a professional tone, right? Because they're our partners, right? Remember, respect grows when communication protects the dignity, even during disagreements. Right? Very important to remember. Empowering teams. That really is where we are enabling people to act with confidence, right? And speed, accuracy, clear authority, access to information, and we're going to define any decision rights that may occur or any rules, decision rules along the way. So when we're talking about in strategic communication, we're talking about empowerment. And empowerment happens when the leaders just set the intent, they establish the boundaries and the success measures. Then they trust that their team can execute and learn from that. So when we're talking empowering teams, we're talking about it promotes open dialogue. And that simply means that we're going to create those channels where the questions and concerns of dissent are welcomed without penalty. We're talking seeks team input actively. Yeah, seeking team input. We're going to ask those targeted questions. We're going to gather that frontline insight and involve those teams early on in any planning or problem solving initiatives that we have to engage in. Cultivate shared ownership. That's where we clarify the goals, the roles, the decision rights, so that ultimately accountability is understood across all the teams involved in execution of this mission. So reinforce ownership through commitments, milestones, visible recognition of contributions. Excuse me. And then we're going to drive innovation and motivation. That simply means that we're going to communicate with purpose, right? We're going to communicate our constraints, and we're going to gain permission, right? We're gonna earn permission to test any ideas within defined risk limits, right? And then we're going to reward learning and progress, not only for perfect outcomes, really, but to be able to sustain any of the initiatives that we're trying to pursue, right? I remember asking, whenever I asked for something, a product to be put together in, say, a PowerPoint slide, I would only ask for an 85% completion, because that allowed me at least 10% of what I needed to say. Okay, got it. This is great, but these are the things I need to fix, or I need to add to this product in order for me to send it to the next level. I only gave them 5% of what it was I initially asked for. Right? That's what we're talking about. It doesn't have to be perfect. The outcomes don't have to be perfect at this point. We just want to sustain the initiative itself. Resolving conflicts means that we are managing the disagreements, so it leads to a clearer decision, restored working relationships, and pursuing the forward progress that we want. In strategic communication, it relies on shared, keyword, shared facts, respectful dialogue, structured problem solving, and clear commitments that reduce recurring friction. That reduces recurring friction. So, resolving conflict emphasizes shared goals. That means that we refrain from the discussion around, we reframe the discussion around the mission, success measures, and non-negotiables and or our priorities. So if you're in a discussion and things get heated and they're going away from the direction of the mission, the success, the objectives, the vision, we have to be able to reframe it to bring it back to what really matters. People will get into their feelings and will take the conversation off to the left or to the right. And that's absolutely not what we want. Resolving conflicts means we respect diverse perspectives. We as leaders must recognize that surface assumptions, constraints, stakeholder roles, and backgrounds have an impact on the success or failure of our organizational mission. So we must validate their viewpoints as data, because we can do something with what we've learned from them. Then we can test those assumptions or those opinions against the evidence that we currently have and our overall mission objectives down the road. Resolving conflict communicates with empathy, is where we acknowledge the impact that we're going to experience, any concerns and any emotions, while keeping standards and expectations clear. And resolving conflict strengthens team dynamics. That simply means that we, as the leader, sets the norms for disagreement, the norms for escalation, and the norm for decision closure. We as the leader own that. And remember that, as you heard me mention before, to document the agreements that may come from that particular session, document who the owners of the outcome is going to be, or who provides that information back to you. Document that, document the follow through, any steps forward, and how the conflict itself was resolved. You're going to want to document that too, so that down the road you can go back and say, this was an issue, 2 years ago, and we didn't appear to have addressed that adequately. So here are a few reflection questions for you as well. Feel free to pause the video at any point to review the questions and come up with some ideas as to your thoughts on those questions, how you would address those questions. So strategic versus tactical communication. There's a difference. Strategic communication is the leadership level messaging that advances the mission and strategy. Advances the mission and the strategy through things like clear priorities, stakeholder alignment, and decision support. It focuses on that long-term direction, credibility, and consistent narrative across the context that you're talking about. Whereas tactical communication is the execution level messaging. It supports those immediate task coordinations, near term performance. So it really does focus on who does what, who, when, how, and with what resources going to be used. So again, strategic communication and tactical communication. So when we're talking about keeping stakeholders aligned on the priorities, the trade-offs, and the success measures over a period of a long term, we are talking about strategic long-term alignment. Why? Well, because it protects consistency across the initiatives, within the leadership structure of your organization, and across the channels you choose within your organization, right? When we're talking about coordinating the actual work, the actual getting it done in the near term through clear tasks and owners and timelines and dependencies, then we're really talking about the tactical level, that immediate execution of the task itself. Why is that? Why? It's because it reduces the friction that keeps whatever it is we're trying to achieve on target, right? So you need strategic and you need tactical level of communication. So when we're talking about strategic, we're talking about is setting the vision, and we're talking about tactical here. We're talking about really driving the action itself. Here is a strategic communication versus tactical communication scenario. Feel free to pause the video at any point to review the scenario and address the question you see there. Strategic alignment. Our messages have to be strategically aligned, right? So strategic alignment is all about aligning our executive communication, our decisions, and our actions, because they reinforce the organization's priorities, the organization's mission, and our success measures as an organization. Strategic alignment reduces any competing agendas because they link our messages to clear objective trade-offs and coordinated actions across all the leaders in all of the teams, right? That's ultimately what strategic alignment is for. So strategic alignment provides consistent messaging, right? Ways to ensure consistent messaging. Use a single message brief, right? Aligning leaders on key priorities. Repeat priorities across, multiple channels. These are some ways to ensure consistency in your messaging. We're talking cohesion across departments. It's about coordinating what each function, what HR, what's the logistics, what's supply chain, what's the finance people, those functions say and does so that the communication supports the same objectives and the timelines of the organization. They're going to have their own objectives, their own timelines within, but those objectives and milestones and things like that have to contribute to the overall organization because that reduces duplication, that reduces any conflict, and that reduces any rework that will occur downstream after you've done some stuff and it gets all the way down to the other people and it's like, oh, we got to redo this because we were not strategically aligned with the mission of the organization itself. Strategic alignment aligns with the organizational goals. It sure does, because it ties the message to defined outcomes, right? You're speaking in outcome terms, decision criteria, and measurable commitments. This keeps the communication focused on what the leadership is trying to achieve. Your personal agendas are not what's important. What's important is the overall objective of the leader, what they are trying to achieve. Because they have the larger picture, the larger organizational focus in mind. And then maintains credibility. Strategic alignment maintains credibility because, right? Because it matches what we say, our words, our actions, and I'll say it again, through accurate updates, transparent trade-offs, and a reliable follow-through as leaders. We owe that to the folks that we serve. And remember, credibility grows when stakeholders see predictable standards, even while you are under pressure. Tactical implementation is all about turning strategic intent into coordinated near-term actions through clear task ownership, timelines, and communication routine. It ensures that message drive executions remove blocks that may be roadblocks down the road and produce a measurable progress. This is a specific look at what the tactical initiatives are from the strategic down to the technical level. These are the people responsible for getting the work done in the near term to meet the longer term strategic level communication goals, right? There are operational actions that are critical for converting things like priority into specific tasks, handoffs, and whatever deliverables that are necessary, and establishing who the clear owners and what the due dates are, just like we talked about earlier on. We have to use concise updates to coordinate those daily execution of those tasks as well, right? When we say tactical implementation, operational actions, these are some operational actions that occur when we are taking tactical steps. Assign the owner, break the work into deliverables, set daily or weekly check-ins, report progress against the milestones. You should be doing that regularly, but your leadership will set the tone for when they want those updates, right? Tactical implementation supports strategic plans. Well, how does it do that? Well, because it links each of the individual actions and message to a stated objective or milestone that's going to ensure the success of the overall organizational mission. When we're talking about tactical implementation, provides immediate feedback focus. And it does that through the collection of a rapid input from the teams and the stakeholders to detect any confusion, resistance, or any issues early on. That provides an immediate focus on the feedback when you're at the tactical level, because you can say, I hear you, I understand, but when I did that, this was the result. You can immediately clear that up right then it allows the leaders to adjust their instructions. Oh, I understand that won't work the way I sent the message down. What I would like for you to try is this now. You can do that at a much lower level and get instructions cleared quickly, sequencing faster, and to overall protect the delivery of what it is your leader was asking of you. And then monitored for alignment. So when we say tactical implementation, it should be monitored for alignment. That tactical alignment action must continually be tracked and track progresses and milestones and standards against, whatever the standards may be. Then when that's done, we can get in there and say, I see that you're off track. What I want you to do now is this rather than that. Or I can see that won't work based on the direction you've been moving in. Let's get out in front of that, remove any blocks that may occur. It could be something structural, right? It could be something procedural that you as the leader envision down the road may be an issue. And if you're going to be tracking, you have to use some type of metrics, but keep those metrics simple, keep them clear, and make any reoccurring check-ins a requirement, right? Don't let anybody run free for 3, 4, 5 months and you haven't followed up to find out how things are going, right? Balancing communication approaches allow us as executives to select really and blend strategic and tactical messages to really match the situation. Sometimes we have to do that to match the audience. And sometimes we have to do that to match decision cycles when we need to have that decision made by, things like that. Balancing the approach also keeps the long-term narrative consistent while delivering those short-term details to the teams that they need to execute without any confusion. Right? We owe that to them, that clarity, we owe that to them. So when we're talking about balancing communication approaches, we're talking about vision, guides, and tactics. Well, why does it do that? Well, because we use strategic intent to set the priority, decision rules, and boundaries for the execution of the mission or the execution of the communication that we've just delivered as leaders. So those tactical messages then translate those anchors, mission, objectives, goals, vision, those are your anchors, into task, timelines, and established standards. Balancing the communication approaches allows us to adjust based on the results. We use performance data and stakeholder feedback to refine the messages that we deliver as leaders. And we have to do that understanding that that's going to shift or that's going to impact our resource choices along the way. So we have to update direction when the evidence shows that risks or even drift, as you heard me mention before, or if there's any new constraints, some things that we had not thought about before has just popped up, and now we need to take action to address those things because we didn't know that was a thing until as we started to move in that direction. Balancing communication approaches ensures cohesion. That means that as leaders, we must coordinate with other leaders and channels so that the overarching strategic narrative and the operational instructions reinforce each other. Meaning, you're going to have a leader in HR, a leader in finance, a leader in supply chain. You as a leader need to be able to coordinate with those other leaders to reinforce, to ensure that the operational instructions are reinforced as it relates to the overall mission or the objectives that the organization is seeking. And then balancing communication approaches enhances organizational performance. That means that If we achieve balance, we ultimately win, right? Things like improvements of speed, quality, and accountability occur when our communication reduces friction and supports the aligned task execution. When we have balance, we win. Again, here are some reflection questions. Feel free to pause the video at any point to review the questions and come up with some answers. 1.4 ethical considerations in executive communication. Here, what we're talking about is the standards leaders follow to ensure that the messages are truthful, fair, and responsible. And especially when we are in power, and we have to consider things like risk. We have to consider things like the power structures. We have to take into account any uncertainty that may be present. These conditions include accuracy, transparency, privacy, conflicts of interest within management, right? And the respect for the stakeholder input and their impact while avoiding any manipulation or misleading framing. All those things that we have to consider as leaders are part of the ethical considerations within executive communications that we as leaders have to always consider. So, ethical considerations prioritize transparency. That means that we share our decision rationale. This was the decision that I made. This is why I made the decision that I made. This was the information I used to make that decision. Decision rationale, that's what we're talking about. We share constraints and risks in a timely manner, and we do it in an understanding way. We're not going to hold information back, wait till other leaders fail, and then come to their rescue. It's not what we do. It's not ethical leadership, right? We want to avoid any misleading actions. That means that we as executives do not distort the facts. We do not omit material information or use language that creates any false certainty. Again, we align our message with documented decisions and verifiable data as we expect from those that we serve. So don't be the first to run to the microphone in front of the cameras. Get your facts straight before you get there. And when we treat stakeholders fairly, we protect confidentiality and we communicate impacts honestly, we are in fact building the organizational trust. That includes following through on our commitments and correcting any mistakes that we have made as quickly as possible. When we executives maintain that consistent standard, even if we got other things going on, other pressures going on, and we take responsibility for those outcomes, we are in fact reinforcing leadership credibility. Remember, credibility strengthens when the leaders communicate truthfully, act ethically, and can handle scrutiny. Here is an ethical consideration in executive communication scenario for you to review. So feel free to pause the video and address the question at the bottom. Handling sensitive information. As an executive, you will have a lot of information coming your way. You have to know how to handle that. So handling sensitive issues involves communicating high impact topics with care, with accuracy, and respect to protect people, to protect the organization, and to protect the stakeholders' trust. It requires you as an executive to have clear facts, appropriate confidentiality, thoughtful timing, and a tone that acknowledges impact while stating decisions, the next steps. That's how you handle sensitive communication, sensitive issues. They're going to come your way. So, handling sensitive issues means that we have to balance confidentiality with clarity. We absolutely do. Here's how or why we should do that, right? Because it protects privacy, it reduces confusion and rumors, and preserves trust when the stakeholders understand what can be shared and why the limits themselves exist. That's how we balance confidentiality with clarity. Communicating empathy means that we, as executives, that we acknowledge the impact that the information that we have will have on others. We acknowledge their emotions or the emotions that may come up in ourselves based on the information that we have, the sensitive information that we have, and the uncertainty without losing any precision about the decisions or the expectations that we have for ourselves and or that have been established for us in our leadership role. So respectful language and providing that critical support resources where relevant is going to be very, very important to the success of you navigating sensitive issues as an executive. So when we are or can anticipate risks to our people, risks to our operations, risks to morale, then sequence that message to reduce rumors and any disruption that may occur, we are in fact minimizing the harm during any changes or transitions or roadblocks that may occur. So we get to provide, clear timelines and points of contact and practical next steps for those members that may face those issues during those times. When we are applying consistent standards across various groups, and we are avoiding any favoritism or any inconsistent expectations, that is really the basic expectation, really, for upholding fairness and our reputation, our reputational standards, right? So remember, document your rationales for the decisions that you make and the actions so that the decisions withstand any internal or external scrutiny. Again, we're talking about handling sensitive issues. Remember, inclusive communication. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but inclusive communication is you as the leader ensuring your message, your channels, and the participation processes reach and respect all relevant stakeholders, regardless of their role, their background, their language, their culture, or access needs, right? This reduces the exclusion that may occur and improves decision quality through equitable clarity, representation, and accessibility. You as the leader must ensure all those things. So inclusive communication respects diversity. That means that executives must use language and example to avoid assumptions and to treat differences as valid inputs when you're in that decision-making phase, right? When you get it right, it really protects the dignity through consistent and a professional tone. So respecting diversity is critical to your success as an executive. Inclusive communication reflects the stakeholders' perceptions. Why reflecting stakeholder perspectives is important? Because it improves decision quality. It increases their buy-in, right? It reduces resistance and any misinformation. So We have to make sure that our communication reflects our stakeholder perspective. Addressing cultural context simply means that we are collectively adapting framework. When I say framework, I'm talking about that we are presenting the same core message in the same way that fits the audience's culture, their cultural norms, for meaning, their norms for authority, their norms for decision making, those types of things, directness, and communication norms. Really to match the audience expectations across their cultural communication mechanisms. Why is this important? Well, because it prevents misunderstanding by clarifying the terms and the intent of your message. Not everybody will understand your message the same way. This allows you to address the cultural context of your message where necessary. When we as leaders are providing that equitable access, right? Equitable access to things like information, tools, resources, speaking opportunities, speaking up in a meeting, right? Speaking up during events, things like that. And any feedback channels, we are demonstrating our ability to foster equity in and collaboration. Equity and collaboration. We have to facilitate that. We have to make it okay. Remember, collaboration improves when participation is structured, safe, and action-oriented. Everybody should feel included in the decision-making process. They should feel safe to speak up during those initiatives, the collaborative initiatives, things like that. That's what we're talking about here. Combating misinformation means that we as executive leaders are preventing, detecting, and correcting false or distorted claims that threaten decisions, trust, and any operational stability. We have to engage when we see that occurring. It really does rely on fast fact checking, consistent sources of truth messaging, right? And any visible corrections delivered through trusted messengers. You have to trust the person that's giving you that information, right? Especially if it's coming from a higher level member of the chain. But you have to trust your peers as well as you have to trust the people that you serve as well, especially if you're in need of finance information. You're going to go to the finance director to get the finance information. So you should trust what that finance leader gives you. That's what we're talking about here. Combating misinformation. So combating misinformation means that we're addressing inaccuracies promptly. Yes, you must identify false claims early, correct them quickly, and reduce the spread through consistent representation of facts. When we're talking about providing clear, factual updates, yes, you must state verified information, cite source of truth owners, and clarify what is still under review. That is your responsibility. Don't leave that up to the receivers of your message. That's your responsibility to provide clear, factual updates. Combating miscommunication, misinformation protects organizational trust. Yes, you must acknowledge uncertainty honestly and correct mistakes publicly when needed. That's your responsibility. When we say combating misinformation safeguards leadership integrity, yes, you must ensure your subordinate leaders speak from verified data and avoid speculation. Check their work before they run to the microphone, before they run to the cameras. That's what we're talking about here, because we must protect the integrity of not only our leadership, but those other leaders that we, as our peers that we serve with, and the leaders that we serve. Here again are reflection questions of what we've just covered. Feel free to pause the video at any point to review the questions and come up with some answers. These are the 4 areas we covered today in this particular module 1, Foundations of Strategic Communication. Again, this is one module of 12, and this is part of our certification course in strategic communications. All of our courses are 12 modules in length. They are a 5-day certification course, and they're all open forum discussions. They all result or require an oral examination in order for you to be awarded your certification. All the information about this course and many other courses can be found on the MVP Training Solutions homepage. And the video courses that you see on our homepage can also be found. At least 8 of them are currently loaded in the school classroom. So feel free to go out there. 8 of our courses have module 1 available to you for free. And you'll see, like this video will be there for you to review. It'll be part of that particular classroom course. Again, we'll be moving to make the courses on school. Each individual module will be at a cost of $10. So we look forward to having you there. The student manual that you'll find in the school classroom will also have the figures you see listed there for this particular course. And also, these are some of our QR codes to some of our pages. Feel free to go out and share your thoughts on what we talked about here. Here is a Google review link. We'd appreciate any feedback you might have as it relates to this course, the delivery, and your instructor, if you will. But we look forward to hearing your feedback. Again, remember, I talked about feedback and how important it is so that we can make the necessary course adjustments along the way. That's who I am, a little bit more about me along the way. And I'm going to stop sharing at this point. And I'm going to thank everyone for their attention today. We look forward to serving with you along the way. Feel free to go out to mvptrainingsolutions.com and check out some of the courses there as well. Thank you all for joining. Have a great